I am just so honored to have our guest with us today, Duane White. Man, it's just an incredible leader, incredible man of God who's raised up over 100,000 leaders in 65 nations. And man, it's just so evident that God's hand is on your life. And we just finished an incredible time together with you here at Mercy Gate, and just hearing an incredible word about Hooper and what God wants to do, the above and beyond that we could ever ask or imagine. Duane, and all you're doing and everything that's going on, what are you really hearing from the Lord for 2024? There's so many echoes, and I'm really searching for a voice. So what's God saying, or what are you hearing him say?
So good. Every year for 20 years, we have traveled around at the beginning of the year and preached a word for the year. Now it's kind of a popular thing. People say, "Oh, my word is, abundance," and they just grab something out of anywhere and say it. Or my word is, "I'm special," and those are great. But what is God saying? What is He saying to us in this hour? And the things He showed us, we've always said, are not the only thing God's saying.
Right.
But it is something He's saying. And when we're relationally connected, many times what He's saying to one of us, He's saying to many of us. This year, I really believe that this is an Isaiah 54 moment. There's been a lot of barrenness, and we've got to learn to sing in the middle of our barrenness.
Wow.
That when our wombs have been closed and our wounds are greater than our womb, it feels like. The WOUNDS's of our life seem more prevalent than the spiritual WOMB, womb of our life.
Wow.
Then we've got to sing. He said, "Sing, O barren woman, because your next season's going to be better." And then he goes into, and we all preach this about enlarge the place of your tent. The thing I think he's saying in this season is lengthen and strengthen.
Oh, yeah.
He says, lengthen your cords, strengthen your stakes. And I won't spend a lot of time on it, but I believe this is a season. This is a year to lengthen and a year to strengthen. There's a lot of shortening. Everybody's looking for shortcuts. We need long obedience in the same direction. Everybody's looking for ways to life hacks. We need to be willing to endure to the end. I think there's something about that. And then strengthening people. There's just so much weakness, so many things. The world is traumatized.
Yeah.
From 2020, when COVID hit the world, we've never experienced a global pandemic in our lifetime, obviously. And even pandemics of the past, I don't know that nothing had the publicity we had. So the weakening of people's faith is rampant all around the world.
Social media kind of allowed fear to run rampant at a faster rate. And I think you're just so right in that. And people are taking a longer time to recover.
To heal.
Yeah, to heal.
So I think we got to strengthen people. I think we as a church got to undergird people. We got to come up underneath them, strengthen them, and give them help them have a grace to have a faith for the new future, for what God has. I believe that our best days are not behind us. I believe they're ahead of us.
No, I do too. I really do. If you could, I mean, you've raised up leaders, you've trained people in different nations. What are some practical ways that you have used to really duplicate yourself, or what God is really given you that needs to be duplicated in others?
You've caught me at an interesting time to ask me that question, because the answer 3 years ago would have been drastically different than it is today.
Isn't it though? But that's true because of COVID. It seems like everything has shifted. And if you're not adaptable and pliable, and that's why I want a guy that knows systems. I want to know. In my personal life too, I hit a crisis in our life 2.5 years ago that Kris and I did, and there are just so many things in our world that just crumbled around us. And in that, I realized that 30 years ago, we all started teaching leadership, and
30 years ago, trying to find a book on leadership in Christian circles, there was a drought. There were none.
Yeah.
Now there's thousands. They're everywhere.
Yeah.
So I, back in those days, was going around teaching leadership principles. We need those. It's great. It's wonderful. Let's keep doing that. However,
Yes.
I think that we got infatuated, maybe even to the point of idolizing leadership in the body of Christ.
Come on.
Rather than falling in love with Jesus.
Yeah.
And we could take leadership principles and make them work and do church without Jesus. And so part of what I found out is the hardest thing I ever really faced in my life was Duane.
Yeah.
Hardest thing for me to face. I faced a lot of stuff. Hardest thing to face was me. And I came face to face with myself, and I had to do a long, hard look at my life. And I realized, Duane, what do you want? What do you want the rest of your days to look like? So I realized I wore busyness like a badge of honor. So I slowed down. I instituted a Sabbath. I started soaking in the presence of God. I started becoming more contemplative. Now, you heard how I preach tonight. I'm Pentecostal. I'm charismatic. I'm going to wave my hanky. I'm going to run around the building. I'm going to shout. But I want to learn how to be a contemplative charismatic. So now what I care about is not so much leadership principles, but leadership health.
Oh, that's so good.
I'm spending my days pastoring pastors. We handed our church over. And do you know, Pastor Don, I spend somewhere around 20 to 25 hours a week talking to pastors who are ready to quit.
Oh,
every week.
Me too.
So what we got to do is we've got to strengthen them and help them, because how can they pastor their sheep who's wanting to quit when they're wanting to quit? So I care now more. I care, how's your marriage doing? How your kids doing? How's your emotional life? You know, just how are you? What's the health of the leader? Because if we have healthy leaders, we'll have healthy churches. If we have healthy churches, we'll change the world.
You know, it's interesting. I'm finding that in every community. It doesn't matter if it's the business world, governmental world, local government especially. People are really, lack of it. Man, they're burnt out on leadership. And they're like, I don't need another principle. How do I just get healthy? How do I recover? How does my marriage not fall apart? How do my kids not go crazy? And I'm finding the same thing with a lot of people that I'm spending time with, that I'm talking to. And I've said this for years. I believe as leaders, if we would be honest enough and authentic and genuineness enough, that people will learn more from where we have succeeded from. They'll learn more from where we have bled from.
Yes.
Where we've been wounded, where we've been hurt, and how we've recovered.
Come on.
And man, I've used that. It doesn't matter if it's in the business community, governmental community, but especially in the church world, that this is how you can bounce back. This is a way that I made it through. You know, have some scars, have some bruises, but I made it through to the other side. And people want to know how to do that in a very, very practical way. And so in doing that, what are some key things that you think is necessary to invest in leaders, our pastors, leaders in our churches, leaders in our community? I'm sure, like me, you have an audience with governmental leaders. You have an audience with higher levels of church leaders, and I know I do. So what are a couple of keys that you give to invest in them to say, hey, this is how you really get through?
People, in the world, they talk about mindfulness. We in Christian circles would talk about meditation.
Yeah.
So learning things we learned years ago, but you just get so busy, you forget it.
Yeah.
Learning to sit in the middle of our pain and process it properly, because the pain I don't transform, I will transfer.
Oh, that's so good.
So teaching people practically how to transform their pain rather than transfer their pain. And there's some practical tools you can give people to do that. From a Christian perspective, it would be things like what I would call benevolent detachment. So you can teach this from a non-Christian perspective, but it's not as powerful because for us, we invite Jesus into it. But benevolent detachment, bene, good, volent, choice. It's the good choice to detach yourself from a predetermined outcome. So as leaders, we spend our life as visionaries envisioning a predetermined outcome, and we will sacrifice everything around us to get that predetermined outcome.
Wow.
But when I learn that I can be a visionary, but detach myself from a specific outcome, I can still have vision, but leave it to the Lord, how it looks along the journey. Then I can still have a 5-year strategic plan. I love strategic planning.
Sure.
I'm going to always have a strategic plan, but I hold very loosely to it because when life throws me a curveball, here's what benevolent detachment looks like. Jesus, I give everyone and everything to you. Jesus, I give everything and everyone to you. I've probably said that 100,000 times in the last 3 years. So much so that my team around me, anytime anything bad happens or, life throws us a curveball, they all stop and go, Jesus, we give everyone and everything to you. Because it's learning to release it. Now, you can teach that to people, obviously, just learning to let go.
Yeah.
But for us, the power is now inviting Jesus. A couple of quick things people can practice for learning how to process pain. Because, the average pastor, you probably saw this statistic. Barna came out with it a few months ago. The average person has 4 significant relationships leave their life over a lifetime.
Yeah.
I think the statistic was it's that much a month for a pastor.
Yeah.
And I may get the numbers wrong, but what was over a lifetime was literally within a few weeks for a pastor.
Yeah.
So that's painful. How do I process that pain? So one of the things that I learned is you notice it, you name it, and because I'm a preacher, I have to do alliteration. Now you invite Jesus into it.
Yeah.
That little process of noticing my pain, because, you come home, you kick the dog, you yell at your wife, you spit at the TV, and you curse the Cowboys.
Yeah.
and none of that was worth happening.
Yeah.
Why did I do it? Well, it's not this thing. So I got to notice where's the root of it, then give that emotion a name. But that's where mindfulness stops a lot of time is they notice it, name it. But for us as believers, now I sit there. I invite Jesus into that moment and say, where are you in the middle of that, Jesus? And let him speak to me. And he'll reframe it.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I think one of the things we miss as people of faith is the faith and the ability to mourn. Blessed are they who mourn.
Come on.
For they shall be comforted. And mourning is not grief.
No.
And a lot of believers, unbelievers, Christians, non-Christians live in a perpetual state of grief. You have to learn to do the things you just said because that's a proper context to mourn a thing out so then you can be comforted. And somehow we've kind of taken that maybe we're not being people of faith if we mourn.
Right.
But Jesus said, if you mourn, that means you have to acknowledge it.
That's right.
You have to name it, and then you have to invite him into it so then you can be comforted.
I can never embrace the truth until I face the facts.
Yeah.
Because the facts and the truth are not the same thing. So Abraham faced the fact that he was dead, his body was near to dead, and he had no ability to reproduce. But he embraced the truth that God had a promise over his life. So, a lot of people that call themselves faith people, they're just in denial. They won't face the facts. But truth as a person, his name is Jesus.
Yeah.
So I can embrace Jesus and still face the facts of the pain and the suffering that I'm experiencing at that moment.
Absolutely. Man, I think we're going to help some folks with this. And so I just so appreciate you taking a few moments
Thank you, Pastor.
Investing in us and these folks that will be watching this today. So thank you so
much,
much,
Pastor.